Thank you, everybody, for coming to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube page. If you could do me a quick favor, see that little subscribe button at the bottom of your screen? Go ahead, click that subscribe button. Really does help our channel grow, our audience grow, and I really do appreciate it more than you know. So click that subscribe button. Appreciate your support. Now, here's the video that you came here for.
All right, everybody. Hi, back. Good to be back. So, busy time of the year in college hoops. We're going to do a full episode of the Aaron Torres pod later on Tuesday evening. But it's Tuesday afternoon. The McDonald's All-American game is going on this evening. And there is one story that I think is worth addressing here with a quick Aaron Torres pod YouTube standalone segment. That is because this time of year, as we've discussed many times, it is as busy as any time on the college hoops calendar. I call it roster building season. You got players entering the portal. You got guys entering the draft. You guys got guys testing the NBA draft. So players are coming and going from all different directions. But I bring it up because there is some interesting high school basketball news that's kind of lurking in the shadows. Right now, so Tuesday night, the McDonald's All-American game is being played. I think I just said that. And entering the night, there are two players that are currently uncommitted. One is a kid named Trent Perry, guard from Southern California, who actually decommitted on Tuesday morning from USC shortly after Andy Enfield's official departure. We'll save a conversation on him because I don't know that there's any credible information as to what his next move is. So we'll talk about him in the future. But there was an interesting development on a player that we have discussed previously here on the Aaron Torres Pod YouTube channel, and that is a player named Liam McNeeley. McDonald's All-American playing Tuesday night, was committed to Indiana, and about 4 or 5 weeks ago basically said, you know what? Love Mike Effin Woodson, love my guy, but I have to decommit and open up my options. And so at the time, we did a quick reaction video. I think there was an obvious favorite at that moment, but we got an interesting update from the McDonald's All-American game as he both listed the schools that have reached out. And since then, I've had probably about a half a dozen fans reach out and say, Torres, should my school be going after him? So let's get to Liam McNeeley, the latest, the schools that are interested, but then bluntly, the spot that I think actually makes the most sense for him. Liam McNeeley, I think if you're watching this video, you know. 6'8" wing. Again, McDonald's All-American, plays at Montverde Academy. And just really the thing that stands out about him, elite three-point shooter. I think I saw a stat where his summer league games last year, his EYBL games, in games where they kept stats, he shot like 50% from three, or maybe it was in Montverde games where there was an official statistician, he shot 50% from three, whatever. Anyway, elite shooter. And again, when he reopened his commitment, there was obvious teams that would be interested. Well, he gave an update at the McDonald's All-American game, and here is what he had to say about the whole situation. He said of the schools that have reached out, Kansas, UConn, Kentucky, Houston, and Michigan, said Liam McNeeley. I'm sure there are more that I'm missing, but those are at the top of my mind. But he also then went on to say, look, I'm really focused on McDonald's All-American game, and then later this week, I'm focused on the Chipotle Nationals, which is basically the high school national championships. So I'm not really worried about recruiting right now, and it will all be after that. So bluntly, I don't think there is really I don't think this is some big top secret that he's keeping secret, okay? I think he really has a legitimate open recruitment, and I want to talk about where I think makes the most sense because, again, I've had a lot of you reach out to me and say, Torres, what is the spot for this kid? First off, going to eliminate Michigan right off the top. I'm not saying Michigan can't get in the mix. What I am saying is it's just hard for me to know what is realistic for Michigan because let's be honest, they don't have they just hired Dusty May. They don't really have a roster. All their best players entered the portal. Dusty May hasn't taken a commitment yet. And so it's hard to know who he is, how he would fit, all that good stuff with Michigan. Houston, McNeeley is from the Houston area. I'll be honest, I don't know that a shoot first freshman strikes me as a Kelvin Sampson type player. I understand why they would be interested. Don't know that it's a great fit. So let's focus on Kansas, Kentucky, and UConn, and I'll kind of give you my thoughts on each. Starting with Kansas, let me say this. When Liam McNeeley first opened his recruitment, basically said, Mike Woodson, thank you for your time. I'm not coming to Indiana. Kansas was the school that I thought was the obvious one, okay? And the reason why was a couple of reasons. First off, Remember, when Liam McNeeley committed to Indiana over the summer, it was over Kansas. His final two was Indiana and Kansas. He chooses Indiana. So you know there's a long-standing relationship there. Bill Self always keeps his staff together. So it's not as though, the guy that recruited him took another job or anything. So that was the first part. But the other part, which I think was important in the moment, I'm not sure if it's as important now, is that the other variable in Liam McNeeley probably leaning towards Kansas at the time was that Johnny Furphy, the freshman at Kansas, was playing out of his mind at that moment. If you remember, there was about a probably 3-week stretch where Johnny Furphy, probably late January, early February, got inserted into the starting lineup for Kansas, 6'8" freshman from Australia, and he was balling out. And he went from like nice little bench player to he was showing up in the lottery in NBA mock drafts, okay? And so when McNeely announced opened his recruitment, basically the thought was, well, Furphy's obviously going to go pro, so maybe McNeely lands there. Well, what's interesting about that is that Furphy really actually struggled down the stretch. That's not a knock. That's just a reality, freshman in college basketball, whatever. So I bring it up because to me, I think Furphy struggling makes it more likely that he comes back, and I think it makes it less likely that Liam McNeeley ends up at Kansas. This is something that will get sorted out over the next couple weeks, but that is an important variable in this recruitment, in my opinion. Johnny Furphy comes back. I don't think it makes much sense for Liam McNeeley, and I'll be honest, if I was advising Johnny Furphy, I probably would say come back. He's clearly not ready for the professional ranks. Now, he'll still get drafted pretty high, top 15, top 20, whatever. But you're 18 years old. By the way, a year ago, you didn't even think you were ready for college basketball. Remember, this was a kid who was going to do another prep year in Australia. He's from Australia originally, and then come to the U.S. next fall to play college basketball. So you're a year ahead of schedule already. It's the NIL era. You're being taken care of at Kansas. I have no doubt. I just don't see the rush for him to get to the NBA unless you're ready. Come back, be an All-American next year, ball out, be a top 5 pick, and go to a place where you will play when you get to the NBA. Don't know what Furphy will do. That's what I think he should do, and I think that's the variable with McNeely and Kansas. From the Kentucky perspective, Kentucky, in the least surprising news ever, it's been that fan base that has reached out to me more than any other one about Liam McNeeley, okay? So, and I think the Kentucky fan base is very split on should we even be recruiting him. The reason why, you can probably guess. Coming off another NCAA tournament loss in which it was a high volume of freshmen playing and struggling, the Kentucky fan base is very divided on taking Liam McNeeley because they already have 6 freshmen committed for next year. Now, admittedly, a bunch of them are really good. 3 McDonald's All-Americans, Boogie Flan, Jaden Quaintance, and Carter Knox. But at the same time, I think the Kentucky fan base is divided. One side says, really good player, fits the system. You take the talent and you figure it out. The other side is, we just went all freshmen last year. It resulted in a first-round NCAA tournament loss. We can't go freshman heavy in 2024, 2025. Let me say this about the Kentucky situation, because I've talked about it, but I want to reiterate my thought on that situation. And my thought is pretty straightforward. I think the Kentucky being unable to win with freshmen narrative, I think has largely been overblown. The bottom line, and I keep saying this, everyone says, oh, the freshman, it didn't work. But didn't it kind of? Didn't we all agree that Kentucky in the toughest SEC ever, we all agreed that this was the toughest SEC ever, right? Well, Tennessee, which just lost in the Elite Eight. Kentucky won on the last day of the season against Tennessee. At Tennessee, as a matter of fact. Kentucky, against an Alabama team that is in the Elite Eight, ran them out of the gym. So don't tell me the freshman stuff doesn't work. By the way, they got a 2 seed in the SEC this year. So don't tell me the freshman stuff doesn't work, because it does. Now, I do think it's important. You got to find some veterans that are either coming back, whether it's a Duthiero, whether it's maybe Reed Sheppard, maybe it's whatever. Hopefully Reed Sheppard, obviously. But I don't think you need to not take freshmen just because you lost in the first round of the tournament last year. By the way, the other part that nobody talks about, in 2022, Calipari took all upperclassmen, took all transfers, Oscar Sheboy, Severe Wheeler, Kellen Grady. That didn't work either. So Calipari is clearly more comfortable with the high upside freshman, it's a make or break year anyway, I say go with Liam McNeeley if you really believe in him. Now, the question becomes multifold. One, I saw my buddy Brandon Ramsey bring this up from KSR. He said, look, the issue isn't bringing in another freshman. The issue is whoever you bring in, you have to settle on a 7 or 8 man rotation. Kentucky's biggest problem down the stretch this past year, they had 10 guys that they were trying to figure out minutes for. They were basically too deep at every position. They didn't play the platoon like back in the day. But remember, Trey Mitchell's out, then he comes back. Adu Thiero was hurt, then he comes back in the middle of the season. Justin Edwards was hurt, then he comes back. DJ Wagner's hurt, then he comes back. Agana Nyenso starts the season injured, then he comes back. Aaron Bradshaw starts the season injured, then he comes back. And so you look at what happened, and for Kentucky, it comes down to you had too many guys by the end of the year. You don't need 10 players unless you're the 94 Arkansas Razorbacks and you're full court pressing the entire game. You don't need that. And so to me, the much more important thing is if you bring in Liam McNeeley, whoever it is, you got to settle on that 7-8 man rotation. It sucks. Somebody's going to be unhappy, but that is the nature of the beast. That is where I would be confused. The other thing that is interesting, by the way, they do kind of have two wingish type players already committed. Carter Knox, as I just mentioned, 6'6" or so, McDonald's All-American. Also, Billy Richmond, a player that I really like. He's kind of like that junkyard dog guy, 6'5", 6'6", that I think is going to bring some of that defensive intensity that they lacked last year. But again, do you need more freshmen? Do you need more freshmen at that position specifically? The freshman stuff doesn't bother me. But it comes down to, are you going to be able to find the 7 or 8 guys that you play? Or are we playing 10, 11, 12 guys at the end of the year next year like we were this year? Finally, let me say this. I have no skin in the game of where Liam McNeeley goes. And I'm not saying this as a UConn guy, homer, alum, whatever. I think UConn's a really good fit. And if that's what it comes down to, I actually think if I was advising him, not as a UConn guy, but as a basketball guy, UConn's probably the spot that I would tell him to go. One, all you got to do is look at that new age offense that they run. And by the way, Kansas runs great offense. Kentucky, you can criticize them for a lot of stuff, but the offense was excellent this year. I just think that when I look at this UConn Huskies team, the way that they play, the way that they move the ball, the way that they shoot the ball, shooting 37% from 3 as a team on over 800 attempts this year. Now, I know a lot of those were in the postseason, but it doesn't change the fact that they shoot the crap out of the ball. So that's one. Two, the other thing is, believe it or not, there could be some real playing time at UConn next season. We know that at minimum 2 starters are going to be gone. Realistically, 4 are probably going to be gone, and possibly 5. Tristan Newton and Cam Spencer, the 2 leading scorers, are both graduating. They're both 5th and 6th year guys that are out of eligibility. Donovan Clingan, who dominated that Elite 8 game. I saw Jonathan Givony say he might be the top pick in the draft. I don't believe that. I will say Gavoni's the guy that said Bronny was going to be a top 10 pick a year ago, whatever. I don't believe Donovan Clingan is going to be the top pick in the draft. But he is going to go high. He's gone, and I think Steph Castle, the guard, is gone. So you look at UConn next year. They're losing 4 starters. Obviously, look, Hassan Diarra has the extra year of eligibility. He has not indicated whether he's planning on coming back. And I think the big one is Alex Karaban. Is he going to come back? How would he fit alongside Liam McNeeley? Both 6'8", 6'9" wings. I wouldn't hate having both of them, maybe even going a little bit smaller with Alex Karaban at the 5. You also have Samson Johnson, who will be at the 5. But I think, look, Dan Hurley has talked about recruiting offensive skill. And this is a team that is going to lack, I think, offensive skill next year, at least to the degree that it is this year. Bring back Karaban. You have 2 really good freshmen coming in. Amon Noel, I thought, should be a McDonald's All-American. I just bring it up because UConn is going to need bodies. They're going to need to add 2 or 3 people in the offseason. My guess is probably most of them come from the portal. And they do have some very talented pieces among them. Again, potentially Karaban. Just mentioned Jalen Stewart. Or I have not mentioned Jalen Stewart, I should say, the freshman who has been out of his mind the last probably 6 weeks of the season. Carried them in the Big East Tournament Championship game against Marquette. But you have Jalen Stewart. You maybe have Alex Karaban. You probably have Samson Johnson. You maybe have Hassan Diarra. I think you need scoring pop. Liam McNeeley, to me, I think the best fit would be UConn. But again, we will see what they do, and we will see what Liam McNeeley does. He's playing the McDonald's All-American game Tuesday night. Maybe you're watching this video after that. But if I was advising him, I think UConn makes the most sense. We'll be curious to see what happens at Kansas, at Kentucky, and if somebody else gets involved.